views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program host and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by TCN TV Network Incorporated. Due to the social nature of this broadcasting channel, videos may contain content copyrighted by another entity or person. The TCN TV Network claims no rights to the said content. TCN TV Network cannot be held accountable for the copyrighted content. TCN TV Network is a messenger and sharer of information and strives to verify but cannot warrant the accuracy of copyrights or completeness of the information on this program.
Everybody, welcome to Shaping Life. Before I get started today, I want to just say that I hope you got a chance to check out In the Now, which is live at noon every Friday. The girls have some amazing information today about entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur, even if you're not, check it out. So anyways, check that out for sure. But of course, I want to welcome you to the show today. And forgive me for last week. We had some technical difficulties, so unfortunately we didn't get to talk to Lady Susie last week, but you'll see her coming up on a future episode. So today we're going to tackle emotional eating and some of the shame that can be associated with that. Maybe I should introduce myself, just in case you're checking it out for the first time. My name is Trish Curling, and I can't wait to talk about this because, again, I always try to talk about things that really relate to me personally as well, because, that's just the way that it is, right? I think we all go through different stages of life. We all have different experiences, and the best way to kind of maybe go through these things is to talk about them and share them and connect. So that's why I decided to talk about this today. So I'll start by letting you know that I'm a very highly emotional person. I have a really good friend by the name of Louise, and she always makes fun of me because we'll be talking or whatever. Maybe she's on the phone. And over the years of our friendship, and I don't know, a commercial will come on, she'd be like, "You're crying, aren't you?" And that's just totally how I am. So, and the reason why I say that is because, when we talk about emotional eating, it can be connected to two things. It can be connected to negative emotions. It could also be connected to very positive emotions. So when we talk about it, or when I talk about it today, because of course we're all then, and when I say it that way, we're all emotional eaters on some level. Like I said, because it can be connected to the negative or the positive. Oh, I totally forget what I was going to say. Anyway, all right, let's just continue. So, so as I was saying, we're all emotional eaters on some level because of the fact that we associate food maybe with celebration. We can also, as I said before, associate it with negative emotions, which is often the first thing we think about. And that's why I said, the shame associated with it, because usually when you hear somebody say, "I'm an emotional eater," usually we think, oh, okay, there's something negative or something bad going on, and then that's why they're an emotional eater. So I'll share with you, I remember when I first realized that I was an emotional eater. I just put out of the gym parking lot. I think I was probably in about my mid-20s, somewhere around there. And I was just getting it together after a breakup. And so I was working out, but I still wasn't connected to the eating like as well as I should. I knew there were still some things that I needed to fix in terms of my daily diet. And so I'll never forget, I was at a stoplight. And you know how things just kind of come to you sometimes? I was sitting there and thinking like, okay, yeah, I'm hungry, but thinking, I want to just grab probably something shitty. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I knew it was some bad kind of food that I wanted to get. And I thought, why, in that moment, I guess I just thought, why do I want that thing? Why why am I craving that food that I know isn't going to nourish me? And why do I continue to crave that food that I know isn't nourishing me or serving me well, especially when I was trying to, make some changes and get to a better place in my health. So anyways, it got me thinking, and I realized, what are the times that I was feeling that way sometimes? And it was probably a lot of times, or I knew it was a lot of times that I felt alone or disconnected. And, some kind of shitty food would just be like this thing that would, give me this like immediate satisfaction or a little bit of pleasure, just for a moment anyways. And, I think a lot of us can relate to that, so let's look at emotional eating today. Let's look at, how it can manifest. I found a great clip from this gentleman by the name of Mark David from the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. So let's throw to that clip. Let's have a look at his explanation there.
Greetings, friends. Mark David here, founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. Let's talk about emotional eating. I want to tell you what I think you need to know about this topic. Now, emotional eating is a concern for so many people. So here's the question. What is it? Why does it happen? And what to do about it? So how to nail this down in a few minutes or less. So people will self-diagnose as emotional eaters. And really, when somebody says, I'm an emotional eater, what they're saying is, I'm doing unwanted eating that's driven by unwanted feelings. I want to say that again. When people self-diagnose and say, I'm an emotional eater, what they're saying is, I am doing this unwanted eating behavior that's driven by these unwanted feelings that I don't like. Now, here's the thing. I want you to think about this. What's the opposite of emotional eating? Unemotional eating? What would you do? Sit there and just be a machine and eat? So here's the thing. We are beautifully emotional creatures. Emotional eating means you're at a party and you're sitting down and you're eating with friends and you have love and you have nourishment and you have warmth. That's emotional eating. Yeah, emotional eating might be your birthday dinner and you're in celebration mode. There's emotional eating. Emotional eating might be, yes, I come home, I had a bad day at work and I'm stuffing my face with food because I'm all stressed. Now, check this out. We are emotional beings. It's almost impossible to eat without emotions present. Now, what happens is so many of us, we don't experience the full complement of emotions in our life. And when we're not experiencing the emotions that I feel with my loved one, with my partner, with my parents, with the challenges of life, the good emotions, the hard emotions, when we don't really embrace them and feel them and metabolize them, emotions around food symbolically become more important. We put all this feeling and energy and emotion into our food thinking it's got to make us feel good. So what I want to say is we use food to regulate our emotional metabolism. I want to say that again. We use food to regulate our emotional metabolism. Feel bad, have food, feel better. Makes perfect sense.
So I think it's really important what he outlined there, that we're all emotional beings, as I made mention at the beginning, and that, reframing probably how we think about, how we're just reframing our relationship with food can really kind of change the game for us in terms of how we make decisions and go forward. So where does it come from? Stress. Stress is obviously a huge factor, which can have roots in so many things, the financial, in relationships, health issues. It can, come from some form of lack. So whatever it is that we are feeling inside, there's usually a sense of a hole that we need to fill. And then we try to fill that with food, and often we're eating foods that are not nutritionally nourishing to our bodies. That's why I made mention about, when I was leaving the gym and it's like the lights went on and I said, oh my God, I'm choosing these things because of how I'm feeling. It had nothing to, it didn't have everything to do with just the food. There was so much more. There was a deeper level to investigate. So, we often reach for things like that. And why do we do that? It's those places of negativity that rise to the surface. And, sometimes we don't want to feel that or spend time in those emotions. We think, we got to stuff it away, or, we're better than that. I shouldn't feel like this. I'm stronger than this. Even though we still maybe make a poor decision in choosing food to stuff down those emotions. And it's an easy go-to. Food is just that easy thing that we can say, this is going to make me feel good. It's going to give me immediate gratification. It's going to give us pleasure, and it's just easy to seek that out. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those triggers, some of those things, and then maybe how we can, as I said, navigate our way through that. So we'll see you soon on Shaping Life.
I'm your host, Erica Lita, and this is What Matters on TCN Network. What I do every week is I cover what matters to our audience.
Emotional eating is defined as overeating to deal with negative emotions. And our most common association with this is someone who's sad and eating a tub of ice cream to deal with it. And that's one example, but there's also a more subtle way that we connect our emotions to food. After all, the real purpose of eating is for nourishment, but have you ever eaten when you weren't hungry? Eating is a large part of our socialization. We go to fine restaurants to enjoy the experience, and not just because your stomach is rumbling. Here are some examples of emotional eating. Eating as a reward. This would be like having a celebratory dinner or treating yourself to something nice if you accomplish something. Stress eating. Do you need to eat something to help you think through something difficult? Eating to fight fatigue or boredom. Do you eat something when you're working on a tedious project? Eating for entertainment. Is that movie just not the same without that bucket of popcorn or box of M&Ms? If I go to a Super Bowl party, I expect wings, even if I just ate before I left. Just because you enjoy a nice restaurant or a celebratory dinner doesn't mean you have an eating disorder. But in all of these situations, eating becomes attached to something emotional rather than it just being for sustenance.
So I love that. She broke it down, I think, really, really well, talking about some of the things, like I said, that are triggers or that can happen, or the feelings that come to surface. She talked about sad eating, as one, or the way she put it, being sad and eating. And again, like I said, we know that this can lead to bad food choices. It's almost like just that little bit, that self-sabotage. That cycle that can just be created by, I feel like shit, so I'm going to eat something shitty. And then it just, that's just a horrible, cycle of events. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't enjoy, shitty food, right? Every now and then. It doesn't mean that at all. It's just, I think we know, and if we're honest with ourselves, we know when we start to feel bad. We know when we start to feel like, this is not good. Like, I'm getting up on, I have less energy, or I'm feeling bloated, so just that trickle effect of that one decision, or too many of those decisions that now start to make us feel bad. And so when we understand that and we can recognize that, then again, it's just that awareness, I think, that we can create so we can actually make that change. And as I said, food's an easy go-to. It's such a pleasurable experience. Like, I know I love to eat, so it's pleasurable. As I said, we go to it as well for celebration. So it makes us feel good. We associate it with those things too. That, like, oh, remember that time I went out to dinner with so and so, or we had that party and we ate this and we ate that. We associate it with really good things. So we know that we associate it with pleasure. The problem is that, as I said, it may only last for that moment. And then that's where that shame can arise, because we feel like, I made this, maybe mindless decision to go and have this thing. And then now I know it makes me feel like crap. So great. Now I feel like an asshole because I had this thing and I just keep doing it, right? So then again, there's that shame that can come. So eating as a reward, she talked about as well. I've been here and done this. I worked out, so I deserve it, right? It's like I went to the gym, or I went to the gym all week and I feel good. And, so, hey man, I deserve to eat this whole pie. Probably not, but, or I got that promotion, or, at my job, or I got an A on this test. Let's go celebrate. Let's go eat this. Let's go have that. So again, not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's great. Like, it's great that we can share a meal and celebrate. But it's just getting to the point of when it's not serving us any longer. The stress eating, when we think actually maybe it'll calm us down. Maybe if I have something that I know that I enjoy, it'll take some of the stress of a situation away. Like, I don't know, working on a paper for school or whatever. It's like you can just mindlessly sit there and eat chips because maybe it'll just calm me down and maybe it'll make me think a little bit better. Or how often... or eating, she said as well. She talked about eating to fight fatigue or boredom. How often have you said to yourself, oh, I'm just kicking around, there's nothing to do. Let me just go open the fridge and just stand there and look in the fridge and see what else I can pull out to eat. So, I think we've all, I can't say speak for everybody, but many of us have experienced those things. And so, how can this inform our relationship with food then? We can really develop this love-hate relationship with it, as I said, because of it is such a pleasure source. But then we can end up hating it because we think, God, I'm choosing all these bad foods or these foods that don't nourish me on a regular basis, and you can create that self-hate, like, why am I doing this, and questioning yourself, and all those things come up. And as I said, when it's connected with the negative. So, I think there's an element then too that can come into play where it's like, you're starting to hide maybe as well. So it can lead to that. Now you're starting to hide when you're eating. So there's a sense of isolation. Not all the time, but again, in those moments of feeling lonely or feeling disconnected from people, feeling stressed out. Okay, well, I don't want everybody to know that I'm going to, go through this drive-through and order 10 Big Macs. So I'm going to do it late at night. These are the things that can come up. And of course, that's directly related to that shame. So this vicious cycle that can continue. And as I said, reaching for comfort foods. What are some of your favorites? I know I have some of mine. Like burgers and chips and ice cream and things like that. That again, we just associate with comfort. Like like a bowl of mac and cheese. Whether it be vegan or not. It's it's still so delicious, creamy. All those things that we just kind of reach to, or that are easy to reach to. So one of the things that is always so important, and I've talked about on many shows, and some of the guests have touched on as well, is just awareness. Really kind of sitting with yourself and saying, and being honest with yourself, to say, what am I doing in this moment? Why am I making this decision? And we don't need to necessarily, have this painstaking conversation with ourselves, or, go through, hours of, trudging away at, why, or like, what's this big reason? But again, if we just tap into our instinct and we really are honest with ourselves, I think we can know that, hey, I'm making the wrong decision. Even if I don't know why yet, even if I don't know the absolute root cause, I know that I'm doing something that doesn't serve me. So I do have the opportunity, I do have the ability to turn this around. What does serve me, right? Always flipping that thought around to say, what can I take away here? How can I turn this into a positive? What do I know that will actually serve me and make me feel better? So when we come back, we're going to look at a little bit about, as I said, the recognition, and talk about some ways to also combat that, because there are definitely some things and some practices that we can put into place that can help us to, as I said, turn it from a negative experience and into a more positive experience. So we'll see you soon.
At Benjamin Law, we understand the real cost of personal injuries. As the victim of an accident, you may be the one who's physically hurt, but your main concern is that your family are the ones who will pay the price. Benjamin Law will be there for you, helping, supporting, and working tirelessly to resolve your personal injury case. Call 1-855-899-4878 or visit benjaminlaw.ca and let our family of lawyers help your family.
World-famous spiritual astrologer and psychic Pandit Sai is born to serve people. He's an expert on palmistry and horoscope. He can handle all problems and give Vedic solutions for business, job, love, marriage, husband and wife problems, children, personal, and many others, including depression. He also performs pujas to clear all sorts of obstacles. Call Pandit Sai and see changes in your life now. 647-766-1419. Located at 2895 Derry Road, East Mississauga, Airport Road and Derry.
Manage them. So here are 3 tips to control your emotional eating. Number 1, know when you're really hungry. Sometimes hunger can be mistaken as thirst. So first, quench your thirst with something non-sugary to drink, and then reevaluate whether or not you're still really hungry. And also, you want to eat when you're hungry and not when you're starving. And remember, real hunger can be satisfied by anything palatable, so it doesn't have to be just potato chips or Doritos. Theoretically, even a carrot should satisfy real hunger. Number 2 is eat mindfully. I mentioned this in a previous video on mindfulness, and I'll put a link to it up in the corner. But what this involves is eating without distraction and focusing solely on what you're eating. So you want to think about the experience of eating. So that means no phones, you're not eating and watching television, and you're thinking about the texture of the food, the smell of the food, just the experience of it going down your throat, how many times you need to chew before you can swallow. Those are some of the things that you can think about as you're to direct you to be thinking about the eating experience and the eating process.
I love it. She gives such a great breakdown of the tips, and we're going to see some more of her a little bit later. But, knowing when you're hungry, that was a big thing for me. I've shared my story before a few episodes ago. I can't remember what episode number it is, but, when I was really starting to, again, take control of my life and take control of my health, my diet, my exercise, all of that. And one of the really important things that I learned from my trainer, Jessie Lamb, who has also been a guest on the show, I think she's like episode 4 or something like that, 3 or 4. She said to me, again, it was that mindfulness, that awareness. She said, sometimes when you think that you're hungry, you're probably just dehydrated. So drink some water, take a few moments. I think I also mentioned in that show where I talked about my story about how she mentioned to me, like, do a few yoga poses. And I was like, yoga poses? Like, F off, basically. Like, I don't want to do downward dog when I want to eat fish and chips. So, but it's true. It was right. It was that mindfulness. It was taking a pause and taking a moment to say, I don't have to just reach for the thing right away. I can give myself that time to say, stop, literally breathe, so whatever it is, a yoga pose, drink some water, whatever the case may be. So doing things like having my water bottle always full and ready, that was really key. I like to put a little lemon in there too, because it tastes good. So again, a little bit of pleasure, right? So kind of changing or shifting the pleasure source that, I always like water, that's fine. And I know some people don't, but, doing things to maybe add to it, like adding some fruit in there or cucumber, slices of cucumber. But, lemon for me is always a great choice for me. So things like that. Eating mindfully, the doctor talked about, I went to when I was teaching elementary school, I went to a mindfulness course, I guess, or a day of mindfulness. I can't remember. There's a place in Toronto, and I wish I could remember the name of the institution, but I went with a good friend of mine that I taught with. Her name's Treaty. So what's up, Treaty? She we went and we spent the day, and it was really, really powerful because lunchtime, for example, was, not time to just kind of leave the session or leave the workshop. It was, we stayed in the room, we all ate together, but we ate in silence. And we had to, just take our time. So it was, maybe even counting how many, times you chewed your food, or, making sure that you completed everything and swallowed fully before you had a sip of your water or whatever it is that you brought to drink. And, you'd think like, oh my gosh, that sounds really tedious. Like, who has time for that all the time? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I got to rush. I got to go pick up the kids. I got to get back to work. My break is done, but it's small steps. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as a strategy. But it was really powerful because it really did make me realize some of the habits that I had of eating quickly, and just trying to get through to the next thing. Like, okay, like we're going to eat, and then what's next? No, but maybe stay a little bit more present, stay a little bit more in the moment. And God, I can't say no way am I perfect, in doing that. But it's these experiences or these things or just even entertaining these ideas that I think really allow us to start to make some changes or remember when we fall off how to come back. So, that's, I think, the mindfulness piece. I think that's really what it looks like. It's really just trying to stay more, and it's such a buzzword now. We know that, and it's been talked about so many times. But it really is key. It really is important to come back to. I'll shift a little bit and come away from the eating point for a moment, just to share with you that, a couple nights ago, I was trying to fall asleep, and it was a little bit late, and my mind was racing a little bit. I've had a crazy week this week, and a few things on my mind, and I just thought, oh my God, my mind's racing, and I can't fall asleep. And I thought, idiot, just like take a few breaths. Like, you know what to do. Do your deep breathing, slow down, and literally, again, it was just one of those things where all of a sudden it was morning. I just said, I went into my tool bag, took my few breaths. So that mindfulness related to the eating is so important too. So you can take a moment to think about the choice you're going to make, what you're actually going to eat, and then as you're eating as well, just take your time, because that also allows us to be full, right? Like we think we have to maybe eat a certain amount of food, but really if we're taking our time, we're swallowing fully, we're, taking a little moment to just, take a break between maybe one thing to the next, I don't know, your sandwich to your apple, that you start to feel a little bit more full. Like, how many times do we overeat and we're like, oh, I could have stopped at, the first plate, or I could have stopped at just eating these two things on the plate rather than all three, if we just give ourselves some time. So next point in the video, as she gets into, is looking at our emotions before we eat. So let's take a look at this clip.
The third tip requires a little more introspection, and it's to pause and think about what emotion you're experiencing before you eat or before you grab for the food. And this is especially the case if it's not a time that you would normally be eating. So if you do this and realize, well, actually you're bored, before you eat, take a quick break, 5 to 10 minutes, and break up the monotony of whatever it was you were doing. Maybe you take a walk around your home or go outside or something, get some fresh.
Huge, right? Again, taking a pause, taking a step back to say, how do I feel in this moment? Why am I thinking about wanting to reach for this type of food versus this type of food? If we're coming from a place of just feeling sad, depressed, whatever the case may be, then yeah, we're more inclined to reach for something that doesn't serve us. So journaling could be helpful, and you can also think like, oh my God, let's add something else to the day to do. Like, now I'm going to whip out my journal and freaking write out how I'm feeling now before I eat my lunch. Well, yeah, you could do it that way. You could also approach it that, you could do a little review at the end of the day, maybe 5 minutes before bed. It doesn't have to be a whole, PhD, on how you felt for the day, but you could just kind of review and say, how did my day go? How did I feel overall? I had a great day. I had a crappy day. What did I eat today? quick review of that and then say, wow, now I see how I was feeling was directly connected to what I chose or what I did or didn't do for that day. So there's a little, some ways that you can approach it. I'll add also, planning ahead. Planning ahead is a really good strategy as well. Taking Sunday, I like when I am on point, and that's not a pun for the show. That's also on TCN Network. A little plug there for you. But when I am on point, I'm also, I'll plan. I'll say Sunday is my day to cook. So I'll have done my shopping, maybe let's say Saturday morning or something like that. Consider my meals for the evening. That's not mine, by the way. That's just a stock photo. It looks great. I wish it was mine, but it's not. But anyways, you get the point. So, having everything ready eliminates some of that maybe anxiety too over, well, what the hell am I going to eat? I know that I'm going to have a busy week. I'm going to be rushed. So planning ahead can maybe really help with the choices that we make with our food as well. When we come back, we're going to continue a little bit more about some of the things that we can do to combat this emotional eating connected to the negative, and close up with again just a little bit more of my feelings about how we can move past this. So I'll see you soon.
I'm your host, Erica Lita, and this is What Matters on TCN Network. What I do every week is I cover what matters to our audience.
About the shame that can be associated with emotional eating. And we've been talking about in the last segment some ways that we can combat that, or some ways that we can navigate ourselves through and away from that. One of the other experiences in my life, like at the beginning of the show, I talked about, recognizing that I was an emotional eater connected to the negative, primarily. Was when I was dealing with a breakup. But one of the bigger portions of my life was when I lost my brother, and I kind of fell into that again. Because I was coming back, I was getting into really good shape, and then he passed away, and I started going back into old habits, which again, I'm sure many of you can identify with. And so one of the things that I mentioned, my trainer Jesse at the time, one of the things that we did initially was portion control. So, that could be another way to also help, because again, it's connected to that mindfulness piece, right? If we're just kind of not considering what we're eating, we're just kind of going and just putting things in our mouth, then we have no idea what we've consumed, right? So again, something that doesn't serve us. That also goes hand in hand with the, being a little bit of being prepared, which I talked about in the last segment, being prepared ahead of time. So, and as I get to it later in the segment, we'll be talking about, breaking things down into manageable steps. So the portion control thing could be simply, not necessarily being super, super strategic at the beginning, but maybe just saying, you know what, instead of this larger plate of food, maybe I'll just take out, a smaller portion of whatever my protein is, whatever my carbohydrate is, whatever my vegetables are, and I'll, put them and portion them on a smaller plate and eat them that way. Or if you're on a larger plate, saying, you know what, I'll eat this amount, leave half for later, or a quarter of it for later, whatever the case may be. Whatever you think you can handle, because again, it's these little steps that we can take that can help us to slowly move towards that, because it doesn't happen overnight for everyone. It might, but again, with self-awareness, we can figure out what works best for us as an individual. Eating more whole foods, because I think also what happens is the nutrition piece. We're maybe eating or choosing foods that don't nourish us and far too often, and our body then obviously isn't receiving the nourishment it needs. So then what happens is it goes into this mode of, I'm still hungry, I'm still hungry. So then we continue to reach for these things that don't nourish us. So changing that can be really powerful as well, to help us to overcome that. Because, and I'm speaking from experience too, that's definitely what happened with me. I noticed that as I started to have things that were more natural, more whole, then the cravings for certain things died down. And again, that was something else I learned from Jessie as well. She's a holistic nutritionist, so she gave me such valuable information that now I get to use in my life. But eating more whole foods or just making those choices, again, a little bit at a time. I'm slowly studying with precision nutrition, and they talk about maybe just saying, I'm going to attack my breakfast. My breakfast is going to be really, super clean, whole, natural foods. Maybe I, screw up around lunchtime. Maybe I'm back at it at dinner, or maybe both lunch and dinner, I tank both of those things, but one thing at a time. This week it's breakfast. And then the following week, maybe you choose, I'm going to do really well with breakfast and lunch. So again, these little steps that we can take. So, which brings me to that point, which I guess I've already exhausted and talked about, which is just breaking down things into small, manageable goals. What can I actually realistically manage? Drinking a little bit more water throughout the day. A great strategy there could be saying, you know what, I have a goal of maybe even just finishing one whole bottle of water. Maybe it's, again, the next day I'm going to try for a bottle and a half, this gradual increase of better habits. And then not just food stuff, things that can help us to fill our lives and fill our emotions in a more positive way. Of course, I'm going to say yoga first, but going to a yoga class, running, cycling. It even doesn't have to be physical. It could just be making time to spend with family and friends. Having a get together of people and taking time away and your thoughts away from some of the negative things, because we all go through challenges. That's never going to change. Life, that's just the way it is in life. So how do we cope, and how do we get through that? Get out of the house, gardening, painting. If you're a painter, that can bring so much pleasure. So, and again, there's such a crossover. I mean, these things I've definitely talked about in other episodes, because it doesn't change. We can find these things that can really help us to change our emotional state in a moment, on a daily basis. Then we see that becomes, on a week, like, hey, I've had a really good week. I've done more things that I find pleasurable, so I'm a lot happier. So maybe then I'm not making those choices any longer. And I know that, we can feel, like I said, we can feel that shame that's connected to doing this. Maybe we want to hide it. Maybe we don't want to share that we've experienced this, or that's how we're eating in that moment in our lives. But hey, man, sharing, I think, is just such a powerful thing. It's such a powerful thing to do, just to be a little bit more vulnerable. It's really hard, and it doesn't mean you have to chat your business to everybody. but find a close friend or somebody that you trust that maybe you can speak to about this. If you feel like it's leading into something more serious, like an eating disorder, seek out professional help. That can be a really powerful tool for you to overcome this as well. And as I always say, there's always an opportunity to make a new choice. I mean, my health journey is constant, it's this, changes in life, changes in stress, schedules, all of that. So the one thing that I hold on to all the time for me personally is just like I said, just knowing that, what, yeah, tomorrow's a new day, but even the next minute, I can walk out of here and make a new decision in the next minute. So there's always hope for that. Don't feel any shame if this is something that has been plaguing you for some time. We're human and we have these experiences. I just encourage you to fiddle around and try some strategies that may be helpful to you in your life. So yeah, that's it. I don't know. There's probably so much more that I could cover about emotional eating. But as I said, I'd like to share a piece of my own personal experience. Hopefully it's resonated with you in some way. Like, share, comment below maybe some of the things that you've experienced or some of the things that have helped you. Again, it can be so helpful to all of us who are able to check out the episode today. So we will see you next week at 1 p.m. live on Shaping Life.